guys, on top of Breonna Taylor, there's some cases that are just near and dear to my heart. That is one of them. And it was announced yesterday that Officer Kelly Goodlett, the officer who was alleged to have conspired with Detective Joshua James in trying to cover up the false warrant affidavit, she has now, they have announced that she will be pleading guilty, I think on August 22nd or something like that, sometime next week. She's expected to plead guilty to lying to the FBI in connection with the Breonna Taylor warrant affidavit. So I don't think that update needs its own video altogether, because I want to see when the actual guilty plea takes place. But her pleading guilty so soon after the indictment was announced, that's very, very soon. Because, you need time to have an attorney enter their appearance. You need time to have them review the discovery. You need time on a case this serious with such vital consequences. And so it makes me believe that she did broker a deal with the FBI. And it's what I thought when I was first reading the warrant affidavit, because in the warrant affidavit, they were talking about a private conversation between Goodlett. They identified her as KG in the affidavit. I'm assuming it's her they're talking about because she's the only one with those initials. And then in her own separate affidavit, in her own separate indictment, she is identified by name. But in the indictment for James and Kyle Meany, she's identified as KG. And allegedly there was a private conversation between Goodlett and Joshua James in his garage about getting their story straight before they go and talk to the FBI, and basically asking Goodlett to get on their side with lying about them receiving information before they swore out the search warrant that Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend was receiving packages at her home, which in fact he was not. And also, there's also the added fact that James said that the postal inspector had confirmed through some joint operation that the ex-boyfriend was using her residence and receiving packages there. And it turns out that that wasn't true either. So she is expected to plead guilty next week. We'll wait and see what happens there. I think it's completely fascinating. And I also wanted to tell you guys that I did find precedent for a case in Texas. Obviously, this is a federal case, but, I wanted to let you guys know about that. So I found precedent for an officer lying in a search warrant and then people dying during the execution of the search warrant, and then the officer being charged with felony murder, because I have my own theory that this would constitute felony murder. And this has actually been charged before in Texas. Whether or not it could be charged in federal court, I don't think it could be charged in federal court as felony murder, because there's a couple of additional prerequisites for felony federal murder. And I think they involve things like kidnapping and stuff like that, or in the process of terrorism or something like that. So with those, or like a hate crime, those additional factors are needed. But I looked at Kentucky's felony murder statute, and they do have in the B part of their felony murder statute, like the secondary part, they do account for where someone takes place in reckless conduct that could lead to the death of another, and it does actually cause the death of another, that person can be charged with murder, even if they're not the person that actually pulled the trigger. So I think that there is precedent in this country for an officer being charged with felony murder for causing the death of another person during the execution of a search warrant. And I am very interested in us taking kind of like a deep dive in that, but I want to wait until Goodlett herself is goes ahead and pleads guilty to the offense. And I'm trying to find the name of the case because I was writing something about it. So let me just tell you real quick. The case is in Houston, Texas. The officer's name is Gerald Goines, Goines, and he was charged with felony murder for lying in a warrant affidavit, which led to the death of 2 people. So I think for people to flippantly say that this was not murder, if the federal government is able to prove their indictment, is just incorrect. And at least you should look at it more with more thought than just it's not murder because they didn't know that there were lies. Well, one of the officers who's allegedly involved in the cover-up is going to plead guilty to knowing that, it's a cover-up. And we'll have to see exactly what she pleads guilty to. And until she does plead guilty, please remember that she's innocent until proven otherwise. But all accounts from reputable news sources is that Kelly Goodlett is going to plead guilty. And I think she's probably cooperating since she's pleading guilty so soon after the indictment came down. That was probably contemplated as a part of the indictment, because cooperating with the feds doesn't mean that your charges go away. It just means that you get a reduced sentence. That's all that it means. You get which is a big deal because you can get really hefty sentences with the federal government, but you can get a reduced sentence. So I think that that's really interesting. So thank you guys for listening to that update on the Breonna Taylor case and allowing me to kind of sneak that in there when you really came to hear about the craziness that is Depp v. Heard. So let's get right down to Depp v. Heard. Oh, hey, Kansas City. I'm getting like distracted seeing where you guys are coming in from because I'm like, have I been there? Yes, I've been there. I like that place. Yeah. So, one other thing I just wanted to correct is the misinformation that's bubbling around in my comments section on the videos that I do about Breonna Taylor. And maybe I'll clip this and make this. So Natalie, remind yourself to clip this right here, Natalie, so you can make a separate video out of this part. But I wanted to just briefly tell you guys that I've been getting a few. It's not a lot. It's not even anywhere near a majority. It's a very loud minority of people who are commenting in my comment section that the police knocked and announced when they arrived at Breonna Taylor's home, and that her neighbors have testified that the police knocked and announced. This is completely false. And also they are stating that the video footage from the raid shows that the police knocked and announced before they made entry into Breonna Taylor's home. This is completely false. So let's kind of take this backwards. There are several articles out in which in 2020 and 2021, the family of Breonna Taylor is suing the the Louisville, Kentucky Police Department. And in the discovery process, they have requested the body camera from the officers entering into the home. And Louisville police say that they do not have that. And the reason that they say that they don't have that is because the officers that made entry were plainclothes officers. And so in making entry as plainclothes officers, they were not equipped with body camera. And so the only body camera footage that is available to the public and has been released to the discovery process is body camera footage of Taylor's boyfriend being extracted from the home, and the supplemental officers that are arriving on scene. So the uniform officers that came after the shooting was already done. So there is no body camera footage, according to the police themselves. They are because Breonna Taylor's family is saying, of course you guys have body camera footage from entering into her home. Of course you do. Why would you go and serve a warrant without body camera? And they're saying that they didn't because they came in plain clothes, which is, again, detectives, if it's detectives, that's one thing. Detectives are usually plain clothes, but to do a warrant service without any uniformed police officers, that's a bit weird. That's really weird that they didn't, but stranger things have happened. In my jurisdiction, there's rarely body camera footage of a warrant service. They'll take pictures of what they find in situ, in the spot that they find it. But it's very rare that they're equipped with body camera. On the other hand, in Washington, D.C., almost all police officers, almost all of them have body camera. And so when they do warrant service, there's always footage of the warrant entry. Not so right across the line in Prince George's County, Maryland, which is where I practice. So I just wanted to point out that it's not standard practice across the country. It's not even standard practice in certain regions. But it is weird that there was body camera afterwards, but according to the police, there was no body camera during the service of the warrant. And so it's kind of funny that people that are supporting the police in this particular situation, and again, you should just use your considered judgment and not just support police every single time it's a police action, nor should you support the civilian every single time that someone is alleging that it's police brutality. You should just use your thinking caps and look at things critically, right? And so, but looking at the case critically, if you support the police, it's interesting that they're like, oh, the police are right if they don't knock and announce because they had the right to knock and announce. But then they're also trying to put the narrative that somehow the police did knock and announce. So the other reason I say it's false that the neighbor said that it's false that the neighbor said that the police knocked and announced. So the neighbor that testified, and again, like I said, I was writing something about this, but the neighbor, oops, this is something I was writing for work. So that's different because I'm like, why am I looking at? I'm actually writing a motion about search warrants right now for my actual job. So in contingency with that, I was also writing something else. But the neighbor, let me search that word, neighbor. Cody Etterton is the neighbor who testified during the trial. And Cody said that he heard a loud banging and then he felt gunshots whizzing past his head. And then he got down, or bullets whizzing past his head. He got down on the ground. He told his girlfriend to get down on the ground. And they like hunkered down on the ground and there was chaos everywhere. And then after the gunshots were over, that's when he heard the police say, police, police, police. So he did not hear anyone say police before the officers started shooting. So when people say that, oh, the neighbor said that they knocked and announced, that is false. When they say, oh, I saw video footage and Breonna Taylor told the police to get back or I'll shoot, and the police said that they were the police. I've seen that go around. I think that's a Reddit thread. I don't think that someone just came up with. I think someone came up with that, but then somebody read that on Reddit and then they just keep repeating it. But there is literally has never been released any body camera, dash camera footage from the entrance into the home. So just be careful when people say things like, well, why didn't she open the door when the police knocked and announced? If they had knocked and announced, they wouldn't have used a battering ram in order to get in.